The gown was hideous. Saren Hale stood before the cracked mirror in her attic room, staring at the monstrosity she'd stitched together from old burlap sacks and faded brown linen. The sleeves sagged past her wrists. The neckline sat crooked, nearly choking her on one side while gaping loose on the other. The color, a sickly mud brown that made her already pale skin look corpse gray, was so dull it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Perfect. She tugged at the fabric, making sure it hung as shapeless as possible, hiding every curve, every hint of femininity. Her dark hair, usually wild and untamable, was scraped back into a severe bun that pulled at her scalp. No jewelry. No cosmetics. Nothing that might catch a single eye. Are you really going to wear that? Saren didn't turn. She knew the voice, Marna, her guardian, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. You said I had to attend, Saren replied flatly. You didn't say I had to look pretty. The selection isn't a joke, girl. This is the Moonspire Pack's most sacred tradition. Alphas and nobles from across the territories will be there. You could secure a future. I don't want a future with some preening alpha who'll pick me like livestock. Saren finally turned, meeting Marna's gaze with steel in her own. You're forcing me to go. Fine. But I won't play their game. Marna's jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. She couldn't. The law was clear, every unmated female between 18 and 25 had to attend. No exceptions. Even for girls like Saren, girls the village had labeled plain since childhood, girls who'd heard, at least you're smart, and, beauty isn't everything, so many times the words had carved themselves into her bones. She'd learned early that beauty was a currency she didn't possess. So she stopped trying. And tonight, she would make absolutely certain no one looked at her twice. Hey, beautiful souls, yes, you, I don't know where in the world you're watching from right now, but I'm so glad you're here. Drop a comment below and tell me, what country or city are you tuning in from? I love connecting with you all. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in Saren's story. This one's going to break your heart and put it back together again. Now, let's get back to it. The Moonspire Grand Hall glittered like a fever dream. Saren had never seen so much gold, so much silk, so many jewels dripping from throats and wrists and ears. The chandeliers overhead burned with enchanted flame, casting everything in a warm, amber glow that made the noble girls look like goddesses descended from the moon itself. She felt like a smudge of dirt on a marble floor. Stay in the back, she whispered to herself, pressing her spine against the far wall. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak. Just, survive. Around her, the other girls preened and postured, their gowns shimmering in shades of silver, violet, and rose gold. Their laughter was musical, practiced. They moved like dancers, like they'd been training for this night their entire lives. Maybe they had. Saren tugged at her sleeve again, wishing she could disappear into the stone behind her. God, what is she wearing? The voice was sharp, cruel. Saren didn't look up, but she felt the stares prickling across her skin like needles. Is that, burlap? She looks like a beggar. Why would anyone show up to the selection looking like that? Heat crawled up Saren's neck, but she kept her gaze down. Asterisk, let them talk. Let them laugh. It doesn't matter. This will be over in a few hours, and I'll never have to do this again, asterisk. Then the drums began. 3 deep, resonant beats that shook the floor beneath her feet. The hall fell silent. Every head turned toward the massive double doors at the far end of the room. They swung open slowly, and a line of high-ranking alphas entered, advisors, lords, warriors, each one more imposing than the last. But it was the man at the back of the procession who made Saren's breath catch. He wasn't dressed like the others. No ceremonial armor, no glittering medals. Just a simple black tunic and dark trousers, understated and almost plain. But there was nothing plain about the way he moved, silent, fluid, predatory. His hair was dark, nearly black, falling just past his collar. His jaw was sharp enough to cut, his features severe and unreadable. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Storm gray. Cold. Piercing. And looking directly at her. Saren's heart slammed against her ribs. No. No, he's not. He's looking past you. At someone else. Someone beautiful, But he didn't look away. For a moment that stretched impossibly long, his gaze locked onto hers, and something flickered across his face, something raw and startled and dangerous. Then someone stepped in front of her, blocking her view, and the moment shattered. All unmated females, please form a line before the celestial stone. The announcement jolted Saren back to reality. Around her, girls began moving forward, their faces bright with hope and nerves. The celestial stone, a massive, ancient crystal set into a pedestal at the center of the hall, glowed faintly with inner light. Legend said it could sense a true mate. That when the destined pair came near, the stone would react. Saren had always thought it was nonsense. Romantic propaganda to make the selection seem mystical instead of transactional. But as the line formed and girls began stepping forward one by one, the stone remained dim. Quiet. Unresponsive. Until Saren's turn came. She didn't want to move. Every instinct screamed at her to stay back, to let someone else go first. But Marna's voice echoed in her mind, you will attend. You will participate, and her feet carried her forward on autopilot. She stepped up to the stone. And the world exploded with light. The celestial stone blazed, white-hot and blinding, so bright that people screamed and threw up their hands to shield their eyes. The entire hall flooded with radiance, pure and overwhelming, and Saren stumbled backward, her heart hammering in terror. What's happening? The stone's never done that before. Who is she? Saren couldn't see. Couldn't breathe. The light was everywhere, burning through her vision, and beneath it she felt something else, something ancient and vast and alive, like a presence waking from centuries of sleep. Then, through the chaos, she heard a voice. Low. Rough. Absolute. Mine, The light died as suddenly as it had flared. Saren blinked, her vision swimming, and found herself staring up at the man in black. He stood less than a foot away, his storm-gray eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, tall, broad-shouldered, radiating a power that made the air around him feel heavy. Who? Saren's voice came out barely a whisper. Who are you? His jaw tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. Then someone in the crowd gasped. That's the Alpha King. The words hit Saren like a physical blow. Alpha King. Kalen Dravos. The most feared, most powerful werewolf in the realm. The one whose name alone made alphas bow and enemies flee. And he was standing in front of her. Staring at her like she was the only person in the room. No, Saren breathed, shaking her head. No, this is a mistake. I'm not. You are. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the murmurs rising around them. The stone has spoken. But I didn't. You didn't have to. His hand moved, slow and deliberate, reaching toward her face. Saren's breath hitched, but she couldn't move, couldn't think, as his fingers brushed a strand of hair away from her cheek. The touch was gentle, reverent, terrifying. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Saren," she whispered. "Saren." He repeated it like a vow. Like a prayer. Then he stepped back, and the cold, unreadable mask slid back into place. "The selection is over," he announced, his voice ringing through the stunned hall. "I have found my queen." The silence that followed Kaelin's declaration was suffocating. Saren stood frozen, her mind refusing to process what had just happened. Around her, hundreds of faces stared, some in shock, some in fury, some in disbelief so profound it bordered on horror. The Alpha King had just claimed her. Her. Saren Hale. The girl in the ugly dress. The girl who'd spent her entire life being invisible. "This is impossible," someone hissed from the crowd. "She must have used magic. Look at her. She's nobody." The words cut deep, but Saren barely heard them. Her entire focus was on the man before her, Kaelin Dravos, whose storm-gray eyes still hadn't left her face. "Come with me." His voice was low, meant only for her. I can't," Saren's throat closed. "This is a mistake. You don't understand, I came here to avoid this, I never wanted." Saren. The way he said her name stopped her cold. Not harsh, not commanding. Almost, gentle. "I know you're afraid. But you're safe. I give you my word." "Your word?" She let out a breathless, half-hysterical laugh. "I don't even know you." Something flickered in his expression, pain, maybe, or regret. But before he could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Your Majesty." An older man in elaborate robes stepped forward, his face pale but composed. Lord Councillor Theron, Saren realized dimly. She'd seen his portrait in the village square. "Forgive the interruption," Theron continued, his tone carefully neutral, "but the Celestial Stone's reaction is unprecedented. Perhaps we should convene the council before making any formal declarations." "The stone has spoken." Kaelin's voice turned to ice. "There is nothing to discuss. With respect, Your Majesty, the stone reacted before you made physical contact with it. Before you even approached the pedestal. This has never happened in recorded history. Then perhaps it's time we stopped clinging to recorded history and accepted what's right in front of us." Kaelin's gaze swept the room, and Saren felt the power radiating from him, ancient, absolute, barely leashed. "This woman is my mate." The stone recognized it. "My wolf recognizes it. That is the only truth that matters." His mate. The words echoed in Saren's head, foreign and impossible. Mates were supposed to be rare, sacred bonds that transcended logic. Her mother had told her stories once, before she died, about how mates could feel each other's emotions, sense each other across distances, complete each other in ways that defied explanation. But those were just stories. Fairy tales for children. Weren't they? "Your Majesty," a woman's voice rang out, sharp and cold. "Surely you cannot expect us to accept this, girl, as our queen based solely on the stone's reaction." Saren's gaze snapped to the speaker, a stunning blonde in a gown of ice-blue silk, her lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lady Vivian Ashford. Daughter of the wealthiest pack in the Eastern Territories. Saren recognized her from the gossip she'd overheard in the village, beautiful, ambitious, and rumored to have been grooming herself for the role of queen for years. "The selection exists to ensure our king chooses a mate worthy of the throne," Vivian continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "A mate with proper breeding, education, grace. No offense intended, of course, but—" Her gaze raked over Saren's hideous dress, her plain face, her trembling hands. "Can this girl even read?" Heat flooded Saren's cheeks. "I can read," she said quietly. Too quietly. Vivian's smile widened. "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that." "She said she can read." Kaelin's voice cut like a blade. "And I suggest you remember, Lady Ashford, that questioning your queen is treason." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vivian paled, but her jaw tightened with barely suppressed rage. "Of course, Your Majesty. Forgive me." Kaelin didn't acknowledge the apology. Instead, he turned back to Saren, and when he spoke again, his voice gentled. "We're leaving. Now. But. Unless you prefer to stay here and let them tear you apart with words." His eyebrow lifted slightly. "I'm giving you an escape, Saren. Take it." She should refuse. Should demand answers, explanations, something that made sense of this impossible situation. But the truth was, she did want to escape. Desperately. So when Kaelin extended his hand, she took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm, steady, anchoring, and he led her through the parting crowd toward a side door. People whispered as they passed, but Saren kept her eyes down, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. They stepped into a quiet corridor, and the heavy door swung shut behind them, muffling the chaos of the hall. Saren yanked her hand free. "What just happened?" Her voice cracked. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything." Kaelin leaned against the wall, studying her with an intensity that made her want to hide. "The stone reacted to you. Not me. You. That's impossible. Yet it happened. But why?" Saren pressed her hands to her temples, trying to think through the panic. "I'm nobody. I have no power, no status, no, nothing. Why would some ancient magical rock care about me? I don't know." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "The stone is older than the kingdom itself. Its magic is beyond even our oldest records. But what I do know is this, it has never been wrong." "That's not good enough." "Then what do you want me to say?" His voice rose slightly, frustration bleeding through. "That I have all the answers. I don't. I came to this selection in disguise because I was tired of women performing for me, pretending to be what they thought I wanted. I wanted to see them as they truly were." His gaze softened. "And then I saw you." Saren's breath caught. "You weren't performing," he continued quietly. "You weren't trying to impress anyone. You walked into that hall like you'd rather be anywhere else, wearing a dress designed to make you invisible. And the moment I saw you..." He trailed off, jaw tightening. "My wolf recognized you instantly. Your wolf. The primal part of me. The part that knows things my human mind doesn't." He took a careful step closer. "It's been silent for years, Saren. Decades. I thought I'd never have a mate. And then you walked into that room, and everything in me screamed mine." The word sent a shiver down her spine. "I don't want to be yours," she whispered. Pain flashed in his eyes, quick and deep, but he nodded. "I know. And I won't force you. But the stone's reaction has made this complicated." "Complicated how?" "The court will expect us to proceed with a formal bonding ceremony. If we don't, they'll see it as a rejection of sacred tradition. Some will call it blasphemy. So what, I'm just supposed to marry you? A man I don't know? A king? No." Kaelin's voice was firm. "You're supposed to get to know me. And decide for yourself." Saren stared at him, searching for the trap, the manipulation, the cruelty she'd learned to expect from powerful men. But all she saw was honesty. And something else. Something vulnerable lurking beneath the Alpha King's cold exterior. "How long do I have?" she asked finally. "As long as you need. And if I decide, no." His jaw worked. "Then I'll find a way to protect you from the fallout. I swear it." Saren didn't sleep that night. How could she? She'd been installed in a guest suite so vast and luxurious it made her village home look like a shed. Silk sheets, velvet curtains, a bed large enough for 5 people, and she lay in the center of it all, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The Alpha King's mate. It sounded like a joke. A cruel trick the universe was playing on the girl who'd spent her whole life being overlooked. Except the celestial stone didn't lie. Did it? A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Saren sat up, pulling the borrowed nightgown tighter around herself. Yes. The door opened, and a young woman slipped inside, petite, with warm brown skin and dark curls pulled into a messy bun. She carried a tray laden with tea and pastries. "Sorry to bother you, miss," the woman said with a shy smile. "I'm Ivy. His Majesty assigned me as your lady's maid. I thought you might be hungry." Saren's stomach growled traitorously. She hadn't eaten since before the selection. "Thank you," she murmured, accepting the tea. "You don't have to call me miss, though. I'm just Saren." Ivy's smile widened. "Well, just Saren, you've got the entire palace in an uproar. Half the court thinks you're a prophesied savior, and the other half thinks you're a fraud. What do you think?" Ivy shrugged. "I think the stone wouldn't have reacted if you weren't supposed to be here. And honestly," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "I think it's about time someone shook things up around here. The nobles have been insufferable." Despite everything, Saren felt a small smile tug at her lips. Maybe she'd found an ally. Over the next 3 days, Saren tried to navigate her new reality. Kalen kept his distance, giving her space, but she felt his presence everywhere, in the guards who shadowed her movements, in the way servants bowed when she passed, in the whispers that followed her through the corridors. And in the dreams. Gods, the dreams. Every night, she dreamed of running through moonlit forests, her feet barely touching the ground. Of a massive black wolf with storm-gray eyes pacing beside her. Of a pull so strong it felt like her soul was reaching for something just out of reach. She woke gasping, tangled in sheets, her heart aching with a loneliness she couldn't explain. On the 4th morning, Kalen requested her presence in the throne room. Saren went, escorted by Ivy and flanked by guards, her stomach twisting with nerves. When the massive doors opened, she found the throne room packed with nobles and advisors, all watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. And there, seated on a throne of black stone and silver, was Kalen. He looked every inch the king today, crown resting on his dark hair, royal regalia gleaming, his posture radiating authority. But when his eyes met hers, they softened. "Saren." He rose, descending the dais steps. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" she asked quietly. "Always." Before she could respond, Lord Theron stepped forward, holding an ornate wooden box. "Your Majesty, if we may proceed." Kalen nodded, his gaze still on Saren. "The council has requested a test." Saren's blood ran cold. "What kind of test?" Theron opened the box, revealing a delicate silver circlet inlaid with moonstones. "This is the crown of Luna, worn by every queen in our history. Legend says it will only rest comfortably upon the head of a true mate to the king. And if it doesn't?" Saren's voice was barely a whisper. Theron's expression was carefully blank. "Then we will know the stone was mistaken." Kalen's jaw clenched, but he didn't object. The politics were clear: if he refused the test, the court would never accept her. Saren looked at the circlet, her hands trembling. Asterisk, this is it. This is where the fairy tale ends and reality crashes in. This is where everyone discovers I'm just ordinary, asterisk. But Kaylin was watching her with something that looked almost like faith. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she didn't want to disappoint him. Okay, she breathed. I'll try. Theron approached, lifting the circlet with reverent hands. The entire room held its breath as he placed it gently on Saren's head. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the moonstones began to glow. Soft at first, then brighter, brighter, until the entire circlet blazed with silvery light. But it wasn't painful, it was warm, like being wrapped in moonlight, and Saren gasped as power flooded through her, ancient and vast and utterly foreign. The circlet settled perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Impossible, someone breathed. But Kaylin was smiling, a real smile, fierce and proud and relieved. Not impossible, he said, his voice ringing through the chamber. Asterisk asterisk destiny, asterisk asterisk. And in that moment, with silver light crowning her head and the Alpha King's eyes blazing with something dangerous and possessive and reverent, Saren realized three things. First, this was real. Terrifyingly, impossibly real. Second, the court would never accept her without a fight. And third, she might actually want to stay. The crown of Luna still rested on Saren's head 3 hours later, and she was beginning to suspect it would never come off. Not physically, Ivy had helped her remove it carefully after the ceremony, but metaphorically. The weight of what it represented, what it meant, pressed down on her shoulders like iron chains. She was officially recognized as Kaylin's chosen mate. Which meant the real games were about to begin. You need to eat something, Ivy urged, pushing a plate of fruit across the table in Saren's chambers. You barely touched breakfast, and you'll need your strength for tonight's banquet. Banquet? Saren's head snapped up. What banquet? Ivy winced. The formal presentation. Where you're introduced to all the territorial alphas and their families. His Majesty's assistant was supposed to tell you this morning. No one told me anything. Panic clawed at Saren's throat. I can't, I don't know how to behave at a royal banquet. I don't know the protocols, the politics, I'll humiliate myself. Hey. Ivy grabbed her hands, squeezing firmly. Breathe. You survived the selection, the throne room test, and Lady Vivian's death glares. You can survive a dinner. Lady Vivian. Saren's stomach churned. The blonde beauty had been conspicuously absent since the crown ceremony, but Saren knew that silence was more dangerous than open hostility. She hates me. She hates that you're wearing the crown she wanted. Ivy's expression turned serious. But that's exactly why you need to show up tonight looking like a queen. Half the court is waiting for you to fail, Saren. Don't give them the satisfaction. Saren wanted to argue, to insist she wasn't cut out for this. But something in Ivy's words struck a chord. She'd spent her whole life making herself small, invisible, unworthy of notice. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Okay, she said quietly. Help me look like I belong. Ivy's face lit up. Now you're talking. Quick question for you all watching, have you ever felt completely out of your depth, like you were thrown into a situation you weren't prepared for? Drop a comment and tell me about it. And if you're loving Saren's journey so far, smash that subscribe button because this story is about to get intense, asterisk asterisk. The banquet hall was a cathedral of opulence. Crystal chandeliers dripped from vaulted ceilings, casting fractured rainbows across marble floors. Long tables groaned under the weight of elaborate dishes, roasted meats, exotic fruits, delicacies Saren couldn't even name. And everywhere, were people in stunning formal wear, their jewels glittering, their eyes sharp and assessing. Saren stood at the entrance in a gown Ivy had procured from the royal seamstress, deep emerald silk that actually fit her properly, hugging her waist before flowing to the floor in elegant folds. Her hair had been swept up in a softer style, with small white flowers woven through the dark strands. She looked different. Not beautiful, exactly, but not invisible either. It terrified her. "The Lady Saren Hale," the herald announced, and every head in the room turned. Saren's feet locked. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't. Then she felt it. A presence at her side, solid and grounding. Kaelan. He'd appeared so silently she hadn't heard him approach. He wore ceremonial armor tonight, black metal chased with silver, a red cloak falling from his shoulders, and he looked every inch the warrior king. "You look beautiful," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "I look terrified," she whispered back. "Good. That means you're smart enough to know what you're walking into." His hand found the small of her back, a gentle touch, barely there, but it steadied her. "Stay close to me. And remember, you passed the crown test. They can doubt you all they want, but Luna herself has already chosen." Saren took a shaky breath and let him guide her forward. They made it 3 steps before someone intercepted them. "Your Majesty." A man built like a mountain stepped into their path, his graying hair pulled back in a warrior's knot. Alpha Dane Lockhart of the Northern Territories, Saren remembered from Ivy's hurried briefing. "Might I have a word about the timber agreements?" "Tomorrow, Dane." Kaelan's voice was polite but firm. "Tonight is for celebration." Dane's gaze slid to Saren, assessing. "Of course. Though I admit, I'm curious about your choice. The girl's lineage is unknown, her pack practically non-existent. Some are wondering if the crown test was somehow influenced." Saren's cheeks burned, but Kaelan's hand tightened almost imperceptibly against her back. "Are you questioning the sacred magic of Luna, Alpha Dane?" His voice dropped to something dangerous. "Because that would be heresy." Dane paled slightly. "No, Your Majesty. Of course not." "Good." Kaelan's smile was all teeth. "Then we understand each other." They moved past, but Saren could feel Dane's stare boring into her back. "That's going to happen all night, isn't it?" she murmured. "Probably." Kaelan steered her toward the high table. "But you're not alone." He pulled out her chair himself, an intimate gesture that sent murmurs rippling through the crowd, and settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Close enough that her wolf, wait, she didn't have a wolf. She was human, or mostly human, she'd never shifted, never felt the beast that supposedly lived in every werewolf's soul. But right now, sitting next to Kaelan, something inside her stirred. Something that recognized him on a level deeper than logic. "Mate," it whispered. "Ours." Saren shook her head, trying to clear it. She must be imagining things. Stress and exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. The first course arrived, some kind of delicate soup, and Saren tried to focus on eating without spilling anything on her new gown. Around them, conversation swirled, politics and gossip blending into a dizzying symphony. "So tell me, Lady Saren." The voice came from across the table. Saren looked up to find Lady Vivian watching her, a wine glass poised delicately in one hand. "What did you do before the selection?" "I'm simply dying to know more about you." The question was honeyed poison. Vivian already knew the answer, that Saren had done nothing of importance, had been nobody special. "I helped my guardian with her herb shop," Saren said quietly. "And I studied in the village library when I could." "How quaint." Vivian's smile was razor-sharp. And your family? Your lineage? My mother died when I was young. I never knew my father. Ah. Vivian took a delicate sip of wine. So no pack connections, no bloodline to speak of, no training in court protocol. And yet here you sit, wearing the crown meant for someone with actual qualifications. Her eyes glittered with malice. One has to wonder what the moon goddess was thinking. Heat flooded Seren's face, shame and anger warring in her chest. She opened her mouth to respond, though she had no idea what to say, when Kaelan spoke. The moon goddess was thinking, he said coldly, that bloodlines and politics mean nothing compared to the strength of a person's soul. His gaze locked onto Vivian like a predator marking prey. Seren passed the crown test, Lady Vivian. A test that has never been wrong in 1,000 years. Can you say the same? The color drained from Vivian's face. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Kaelan set down his fork with deliberate care. And I'm growing tired of these veiled insults. Seren is my chosen mate. Attack her again, and you attack me. Are we clear? Vivian's jaw clenched, but she lowered her gaze. Crystal, Your Majesty. Silence fell over their section of the table, thick and uncomfortable. Seren wanted to disappear. Everyone was staring now, whispering, and she could feel their judgment like physical weight. She's weak. She can't even defend herself. The king has to fight her battles, Then Kaelan's hand found hers under the table. Not grabbing, not controlling. Just, there. Warm and solid and grounding. You did well, he murmured, too low for anyone else to hear. I didn't do anything, she whispered back. You're the one who. You didn't run. You didn't break. That's everything. The attack came at midnight. Seren had been asleep, or trying to be, when her door burst open with a crash that sent her bolting upright, heart hammering. 3 figures in dark clothing surged into her room, moving with predatory speed. Assassins. Seren screamed, scrambling backward as the first attacker lunged for her. His hand closed around her ankle, yanking her off the bed, and she hit the floor hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Grab her. The window exploded inward. Kaelan came through in a shower of glass and moonlight, already half-shifted, his eyes blazing gold and his claws extended. He moved like violence incarnate, grabbing the nearest assassin and throwing him into the wall with bone-crushing force. Touch her again and I'll rip your throat out, he snarled. The second assassin drew a blade, silver, Seren realized with horror, the only metal that could truly harm a werewolf, and lunged at Kaelan's exposed back. Behind you! Seren shrieked. Kaelan spun, catching the blade bare-handed. Blood sprayed, but he didn't even flinch as he twisted the weapon free and drove it into the assassin's shoulder. The man went down screaming. The third attacker, smarter or more cowardly, bolted for the door. He made it 2 steps before guards flooded in, weapons drawn, and tackled him to the ground. Then silence, broken only by harsh breathing and the groans of the wounded attackers. Kaelan turned to Seren, his partially shifted form still terrifying, his hand dripping blood. Are you hurt? His voice was rough, more growl than speech. Seren shook her head mutely, unable to form words. He crossed to her in 2 strides and dropped to his knees, his hands, still clawed, hovering over her as if afraid to touch. Seren. Are you hurt? No, she managed. I'm okay. But your hand. It's nothing. But she could see the deep gash across his palm, still bleeding sluggishly. It's not nothing. Without thinking, Seren grabbed his wrist, examining the wound. You need a healer. I'll heal. His voice gentled as his eyes faded back to storm gray, the shift receding. It's you I'm worried about. Guards were hauling the attackers away now, and Lord Theron appeared in the doorway, his face grave. Your Majesty, we need to question them immediately. Later. Kaelin didn't look away from Saren. Clear the room. All of you. But Your Majesty. Asterisk now, asterisk. They left. Even Theron, though his expression suggested he had plenty to say about this breach of protocol. When the door closed, leaving them alone amid the wreckage of her chambers, Kaelin finally released a shaky breath. I almost lost you, he said quietly. I was in my study when I felt something wrong. Like someone had driven a knife into my chest. And I ran. His good hand came up to cup her face, gentle despite the blood staining his fingers. If I'd been even a minute later. But you weren't. Saren's voice trembled. You saved me. This shouldn't have happened. You should be safe here. Anger flickered in his eyes. Someone in this palace wanted you dead, Saren. Someone with enough access to get assassins past my guards. The reality of it hit her like ice water. This wasn't just court politics anymore. This was attempted murder. Why? She whispered. I'm nobody. I have no power, no. You're my mate. Kaelin's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. That makes you a threat to anyone who wants to control the throne. And the fact that you're nobody, as you keep insisting, makes you even more dangerous. That doesn't make sense. It does if you understand pack politics. A queen from a powerful family would come with alliances, obligations, debts. But you? His lips quirked in something almost like a smile. You owe nothing to anyone. You can't be bought or manipulated through family connections. You're a wild card. And that terrifies them. Saren had never thought of her lack of status as anything but a liability. But Kaelin was right. She had no pack to appease, no family interests to protect. She could be truly independent. If she survived long enough. What happens now? She asked. Kaelin's expression hardened. Now I find out who sent those assassins. And I make sure everyone in this palace understands what happens to people who threaten my mate. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Should have made her want to run. Instead, it made her feel safe. Protected. Cherished. Kaelin. His name felt strange on her tongue, intimate. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. Because you're mine. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. The moment I saw you in that ridiculous dress, trying so hard to be invisible, my wolf recognized you. And when the stone reacted. He shook his head. I've been alone for so long, Saren. I'd accepted I would never have this. Never have you. And now that I do, now that I've found you. His forehead pressed against hers, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. I will burn this entire kingdom to ash before I let anyone take you from me. Saren's breath caught. She should protest, should remind him that she hadn't agreed to be his, hadn't chosen this bond. But the truth was, she was starting to choose it. Not because of destiny or magic or some ancient stone. Because of the man in front of her. The king who'd defended her at dinner, who'd crashed through a window to save her life, who looked at her like she was precious beyond measure. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. His arms came around her, careful of her bruises, and pulled her close. But I've got you. I swear it. And for the first time since this madness began, wrapped in the arms of the Alpha King while her chambers lay in ruins around them, Saren let herself believe him. She let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't nobody after all. Maybe she was exactly who she was supposed to be. The assassins had failed tonight. But as dawn broke over the palace, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, both Saren and Kaelan knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was only the beginning. The interrogation took 3 days. 3 days of locked doors, whispered meetings, and mounting tension that pressed down on the palace like a coming storm. Saren wasn't allowed in the dungeons where the captured assassins were being questioned. Kaelan had been adamant about that, but she heard the rumors. They weren't talking. Not a word. Which meant either they were fanatically loyal to whoever had hired them, or they were more afraid of their employer than of the Alpha King's wrath. Neither option was comforting. You need to eat, Ivy insisted, setting down yet another untouched meal tray. Starving yourself won't help anyone. I can't. Saren stood at the window of her new chambers. She'd been moved after the attack to rooms closer to Kaelan's own suite, staring out at the palace grounds. Someone out there wants me dead, Ivy. Someone in this palace. How am I supposed to eat and sleep and pretend everything's normal when I don't know who to trust? You trust His Majesty. Do I? The words came out sharper than Saren intended. I've known him less than a week. This bond, this mate connection everyone keeps talking about, what if it's just magic? What if none of this is real? Ivy was quiet for a long moment. Then, you really believe that? Saren closed her eyes. No. That was the problem. She didn't believe it. Because every time Kaelan looked at her, every time he touched her or spoke her name, something inside her responded. Something primal and true that had nothing to do with magic or destiny and everything to do with the way he made her feel. Seen. Protected. Chosen. I don't know what I believe anymore, she whispered. A knock at the door made them both jump. Lord Theron entered without waiting for permission, his expression grave. Lady Saren. His Majesty requests your presence in the war room. Immediately. Saren's stomach dropped. Why? What happened? The assassins talked. Theron's jaw tightened. You need to hear this. The war room was exactly what it sounded like, a circular chamber dominated by a massive table carved with a map of the territories, surrounded by grim-faced warriors and advisors. Kaelan stood at the head, his hands braced on the table, his shoulders tight with barely controlled rage. He looked up when Saren entered, and something in his expression made her heart clench. Saren. His voice was rough. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to hear this, but... Just tell me. She forced herself to step closer, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Who sent them? Kaelan's jaw worked. Then, Lady Vivian Ashford. The name landed like a physical blow. What? Saren breathed. She hired them through intermediaries, Theron explained, his tone carefully neutral. Paid them in gold and promised more once you were disposed of. The assassins broke when we threatened to expose their families to pack justice. Vivian. Beautiful, ambitious Vivian who'd wanted the crown for herself. Who'd smiled sweetly while cutting Saren down with words. Where is she? Saren's hands clenched into fists. She tried to have me killed. She's in custody, Kaelan said flatly. In the dungeons, awaiting trial. Trial? Saren stared at him. She sent assassins. She. And she'll face justice for it. Kaelan moved around the table, his eyes never leaving hers. But there's more. Something worse. Worse than attempted murder. Saren couldn't imagine what. Vivian wasn't working alone, Theron said quietly. Her father, Lord Ashford, funded the operation. And they had support from at least 3 other noble houses. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Saren's feet. A conspiracy, she whispered. Against me? Against us. Kaelin's hand found hers, grounding her. Against our bond. They believe you're a threat to the established order. That a queen without noble blood will upset the balance of power among the great families. So they tried to kill her. Alpha Dane's voice cut through the room. He'd been standing in the shadows, Saren realized. That's not politics. That's treason. Agreed. Kaelin's voice turned to steel. Which is why I'm moving forward with immediate arrests. Every family involved will face charges. Their titles will be stripped, their lands forfeit. Your Majesty. An older advisor stepped forward, his expression troubled. With respect, half the noble houses in the kingdom have ties to the Ashford family. If you move against them all, you risk civil war. Then let there be war. Kaelin's eyes flashed gold. I will not tolerate anyone who threatens my mate. Kaelin, wait. Saren squeezed his hand, forcing him to look at her. If you start a war over me, how many people will die? How many innocent wolves will be caught in the crossfire? I don't care. I do. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. I won't be responsible for bloodshed. There has to be another way. There isn't. Kaelin's free hand came up to cup her face, desperate. Don't you understand? They'll keep trying. Every day you stay here, you're in danger. Unless I make an example so brutal, so absolute, that no one ever dares. Then you'll be the monster they already believe you are, Saren said softly. The Tyrant King. Is that what you want? Something cracked in his expression. I want you safe. I know. She leaned into his touch, her heart breaking for him. But not like this. Then how? His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. Tell me how to protect you without destroying everything. Before she could answer, another guard burst into the room. Your Majesty. Riders approaching from the east. Multiple packs. They're demanding an audience. Kaelin's expression shuddered. Let me guess. They've heard about the arrests. Yes, Your Majesty. And they're not happy. Of course they weren't. News traveled fast in the Wolf territories, and apparently word of Vivian's arrest had already spread. How many packs? Dane asked sharply. 7. Maybe more behind them. The guard's face was pale. Your Majesty, they're calling for Lady Saren to step down. They say the selection was invalid, that the crown test was manipulated. They want you to choose a different mate. The words hung in the air like poison. Saren felt the bottom drop out of her world. No. Kaelin's voice was deadly quiet. Absolutely not. Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider, Theron began. I said no. Kaelin rounded on him, and for a moment the full weight of his alpha power flooded the room, forcing everyone except Saren to lower their eyes. Saren is my mate. That is not negotiable. But if it prevents civil war, another advisor started. There won't be a war, Saren heard herself say. Every head turned toward her. Saren, Kaelin's voice held a warning. Because I'm leaving. The words fell like stones into water, rippling outward in waves of shocked silence. What? Kaelin stared at her like she'd stabbed him. No. Absolutely not. You're not. Listen to me. Saren pulled her hand free from his, even though it hurt like tearing off her own skin. If I stay, people die. Your kingdom tears itself apart. But if I go, if I step aside, the nobles get what they want. The crisis ends. The crisis ends when I execute every traitor who dared threaten you. Kaelin's voice rose, raw with desperation. You can't leave. The bond. The bond was a mistake. The lie tasted like ash, but Saren forced it out. We barely know each other, Kaelin. Maybe the stone was wrong. Maybe I'm not supposed to be your mate. Maybe. Don't. His hands gripped her shoulders, his eyes blazing. Don't you dare try to convince me this isn't real. I feel you, Saren. Every moment of every day, I feel you like a second heartbeat. When you're afraid, I feel it. When you're sad, it carves me hollow. And when you're near me. His forehead dropped to hers, his voice breaking. When you're near me, I'm whole for the first time in my life. Tears burned Saren's eyes. I feel it too. Then don't leave me. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Please. We'll find another way. I swear to you. There is no other way. The words ripped from her throat. Can't you see? As long as I'm here, you'll be forced to choose between me and your kingdom. And I won't let you destroy everything you've built because of some magical bond neither of us asked for. I don't care about the kingdom, Kaelin said fiercely. I care about you. You're the Alpha King. You don't get that luxury. She stepped back, breaking contact, and it felt like severing a limb. Every instinct screamed at her to stay, to fight, to claim what was hers. But she'd spent her whole life being nobody. Being overlooked and dismissed and told she wasn't enough. Maybe they'd been right. I'll leave tonight, she said quietly, addressing the room at large now. Tell the Pax I've renounced any claim to the throne. The selection can continue. You can choose someone, appropriate. Saren. I'm sorry, Kaelin. She met his eyes one last time, memorizing the storm-gray depths, the pain etched into every line of his face. I'm so sorry. Then she turned and walked out, her spine straight, her head high. She made it all the way back to her chambers before she collapsed. Ivy found her on the floor, sobbing into her hands, her whole body shaking with the force of her grief. Oh, honey. Ivy dropped down beside her, pulling her close. What happened? I have to leave, Saren choked out. I have to go and I can't. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the agony tearing through her chest. The bond. She'd felt it snap into place over the past week, strand by invisible strand, weaving her soul to Kaelin's. And now she was ripping it apart with her own hands. For his sake. For his kingdom. For a future she would never be part of. There has to be another way, Ivy whispered, rocking her gently. But there wasn't. Outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, dark and threatening, like the kingdom itself was mourning. And in the war room, the Alpha King stood alone, staring at the door his mate had walked through. His hands clenched into fists. His wolf howled inside him, demanding he chase her, claim her, refuse to let her go. But he was a king before he was a man. And kings didn't get happy endings. Saren never made it out of the palace. She'd packed her meager belongings, which fit into a single worn satchel, and was halfway down the servants' corridor when she felt it. A pull. Sharp and undeniable, like a fishhook buried in her sternum, yanking her backward. She gasped, stumbling against the wall, one hand pressed to her chest. What? Then she heard the screams. Saren dropped her bag and ran, her feet carrying her toward the commotion before her mind could catch up. She burst into the main courtyard and froze. Chaos. Pure, terrifying chaos. The 7 Pax that had come demanding her removal hadn't come for negotiation. They'd come for war. Wolves in half-shifted form battled Kaelin's guards. Blood stained the pristine white stones. And in the center of it all, surrounded by enemies, was Kaelin himself, fully shifted into a massive black wolf, his jaws dripping crimson as he fought with savage grace. But there were too many. Even as Seren watched, 3 wolves converged on him from different angles. No. The word tore from her throat. She didn't think. Didn't question. She just ran. Her body moved on instinct, faster than she'd ever moved before. The world blurred around her, and she felt something inside her crack, like a door she'd never known existed suddenly bursting open. Heat flooded her veins. Her bones began to shift. No. Impossible. I've never shifted. I can't, But she was. Her body contorted, reformed, and suddenly she was running on 4 legs instead of 2. White fur rippled across her skin where there had been none before. And the world sharpened into crystal clarity, every scent, every sound, every heartbeat. She was a wolf. She'd always been a wolf. The revelation would have to wait. Right now, Kaelin was in danger. Seren launched herself at the nearest attacker, her newfound instincts guiding her. Her jaws closed around the enemy wolf's shoulder, and she tasted blood. The wolf yelped and threw her off, but she'd bought Kaelin a precious second to dispatch another opponent. His head swung toward her, his golden eyes wide with shock. Seren. She heard his voice, not out loud, but in her mind. The mate bond, she realized. Fully active now that she'd shifted. I'm not leaving you, she projected back, the mental connection feeling as natural as breathing. You should run. I'm done running. More wolves poured into the courtyard. This wasn't just about Seren anymore, this was a coordinated attack on the throne itself. A coup disguised as righteous indignation. And at the edge of the battle, Seren spotted her, Lady Vivian, no longer in custody, her hands glowing with forbidden magic as she directed the assault. She escaped, Seren snarled through the bond. Vivian, she's controlling them. Kaelin's fury blazed through their connection like wildfire. Stay behind me. But Seren had spent her whole life staying behind, staying small, staying safe. Not anymore. She charged toward Vivian, dodging between battling wolves. The blonde woman's eyes widened as Seren approached, and she raised her hands, magic crackling between her fingers. You should have left when you had the chance, little wolf, Vivian hissed. I'm not little anymore. Seren leaped, and Vivian's spell went wide. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of fur and fabric, and Seren's jaws snapped toward Vivian's throat. Wait! Vivian shrieked. Wait, please, I'll call them off. I'll stop the attack. Seren paused, her teeth a hair's breadth from Vivian's jugular. Don't trust her, Kaelin's voice warned in her mind. But Seren saw something in Vivian's eyes, genuine terror, yes, but also something else. Regret, maybe. Or realization. Why? Seren demanded, her mental voice somehow reaching Vivian through the bond's overflow. Why did you do this? Because I was supposed to be queen. Vivian's voice cracked. I trained my whole life, prepared for this moment, and then you showed up in that hideous dress and the stone chose you. Someone with no training, no bloodline, no, she choked on a sob. It wasn't fair. Life isn't fair, Seren said quietly. But that didn't give you the right to try to kill me. I know. Tears streaked through the dirt on Vivian's face. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I let my jealousy turn me into a monster. Around them, the battle was winding down. Kaelin's forces had gained the upper hand, and several of the attacking wolves had already surrendered. Saren slowly backed off, releasing Vivian but keeping her pinned with her gaze. "Call them off," she commanded. "Now." Vivian scrambled to her feet and raised her hands, her voice carrying across the courtyard with magically enhanced volume. "Stand down. All forces, stand down." The fighting stopped. Wolves froze mid-lunge, confusion rippling through their ranks. "This attack was based on lies," Vivian continued, her voice breaking. "Lies I told you. Saren Hale is the true mate to the Alpha King. The stone chose her fairly. And I." She swallowed hard. "I am guilty of treason." Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing and the groans of the wounded. Then Kalen shifted back to human form, blood streaming from a dozen wounds, his eyes blazing as he stalked toward Vivian. "You tried to kill my mate," he said, each word dropping like a stone. "You manipulated noble houses into civil war. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right now." "I can't." Vivian dropped to her knees, baring her throat in submission. "I deserve death." Kalen's claws extended, and Saren felt his rage through the bond, hot and righteous and demanding blood. But she also felt something else. The weight of kingship. The burden of justice versus vengeance. "Kalen," she said softly through their connection. "Don't let her turn you into the monster she tried to paint you as." His eyes snapped to her, and she shifted back to human form, a process that should have been agonizing but felt natural, like slipping into familiar clothes. She stood before him, covered in blood and dirt, her borrowed gown in tatters. "She's not worth it," Saren said aloud. "Execute her, and she becomes a martyr. The noble houses will whisper that you're a tyrant who kills anyone who opposes him." She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "Show mercy. Show them you're better than their worst fears." "She tried to take you from me," Kalen's voice was raw. "Mercy is more than she deserves." "Maybe. But mercy is what makes you worthy of being king." Something shifted in his expression. The rage didn't disappear, but it banked, controlled. He turned back to Vivian. "You'll spend the rest of your life in exile. No lands, no title, no pack. You'll wander the territories as a lone wolf, and if you ever set foot in my kingdom again, I will kill you. Do you understand?" Vivian nodded, tears streaming freely now. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Don't thank me. Thank her." Kalen's arm wrapped around Saren's waist, pulling her against his side. "She's the only reason you're still breathing." Guards moved forward to escort Vivian away. The other attacking wolves surrendered their weapons, their rebellion broken. And as dawn broke over the blood-stained courtyard, Kalen turned to Saren with wonder in his eyes. "You shifted," he breathed. "I know. I didn't even know I could. You're magnificent." He cupped her face in both hands, heedless of the watching crowd. "Brave and strong and absolutely magnificent." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I know." His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. "But you stayed. You fought. You saved me. We saved each other." 3 months later, Saren stood in the royal gardens, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. So much had changed since that bloody morning in the courtyard. The noble houses that had supported Vivian's coup had been given a choice: swear renewed fealty or forfeit their titles. Most had chosen loyalty. The few who hadn't had been stripped of power peacefully, their lands redistributed to wolves who'd proven their devotion to the crown. There had been no civil war. No mass executions. Just quiet, firm justice. And through it all, Saren had been at Kalen's side. Not as a shadow or a decoration, but as his partner. His equal. His mate. "There you are. She turned to find Kaelan approaching, still dressed in his council robes from the afternoon's session. He looked tired but content, and when he reached her, he pulled her into his arms without hesitation. "How did the session go?" she asked, resting her head against his chest. "Long, tedious. Made bearable only by the knowledge that you'd be waiting for me when it was over." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Alpha Dane officially recognized you as queen today. That makes it unanimous. All 7 territories. All the great houses. Finally united in accepting her." "I never thought this would be my life," Saren murmured. "A year ago, I was nobody. Just the plain girl in the village." "You were never nobody." Kaelan tilted her chin up, his storm-gray eyes soft. "You were always extraordinary. The world just hadn't figured it out yet." "You're biased." "Absolutely." He grinned, and the expression transformed his usually serious face into something boyish and beautiful. "I'm hopelessly, completely biased. And I wouldn't have it any other way." Saren rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring 3 months of growing love into the gesture. He responded immediately, his arms tightening around her, and for a long moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kaelan's eyes had gone golden. "Careful, my queen," he murmured. "Keep kissing me like that, and I'll scandalize the entire garden staff." "The bonding ceremony is in 2 weeks, Saren reminded him, blushing. "You can wait." "Barely." But he stepped back, giving her space, always respecting her boundaries even as the mate bond hummed between them with growing intensity. The formal bonding ceremony would seal their connection permanently, making Saren not just his mate but his wife in the eyes of Wolflaw. She'd been nervous at first, it was a huge commitment, an irrevocable choice. But then she'd realized something, she'd already chosen him. That morning in the courtyard, when she'd shifted for the first time and thrown herself into battle to save him. That was when she'd truly accepted the bond. Everything else was just ceremony. "I have something for you," Kaelan said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Kaelan, you don't have to keep buying me things. It's not new." He opened the box, revealing a delicate silver ring inlaid with a single moonstone. "It was my mother's. She wore it every day until she died, and she made me promise to give it to my mate when I found her." His voice roughened. "I want you to have it. Not because you're queen, but because you're mine." Tears pricked Saren's eyes as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "So are you." She laughed, shaking her head. "I'm really not." "Saren." He caught her chin again, his expression fierce. "When are you going to believe me? You are beautiful. Not despite your plain features or your humble origins, but because of your heart. Your courage. Your kindness even to those who tried to destroy you." His thumb traced her lower lip. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." And looking into his eyes, seeing herself reflected there, strong, valued, loved, Saren finally started to believe it. She wasn't the plain girl anymore. Wasn't the nobody trying to hide in an ugly dress. She was Saren Hale, queen of the Moonspire pack. Mate to the Alpha King. A wolf who'd found her voice and her strength and her place in the world. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now. "I love you too." Kaelan pulled her close again, and they stood there as stars began to emerge overhead. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for being brave enough to choose this, to choose us. Always," Saren promised. And as the moon rose full and bright above them, blessing their bond with silver light, Saren knew with absolute certainty. She'd come to the selection trying to be overlooked. Instead, she'd found her destiny. Not because of magic or stones or ancient prophecies, but because she'd had the courage to be herself, awkward, uncertain, imperfect self, and found a man who loved her for exactly who she was. The girl in the ugly dress had become a queen. But more importantly, she'd become whole. And there you have it, friends. Saren's journey from invisible to indispensable, from hiding to thriving. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what moment resonated most with you. Was it when Saren first shifted? When she chose to stay and fight? Let me know. And remember, you're never just anything. Like Saren, you're exactly who you're meant to be. Until next time, beautiful souls. Keep believing in your own magic, **** sparkles.